to mind?
Well, my dad was in the hospital for Christmas. He died in January. In the chapel of this hospital, it had been beautifully decorated with poinsettias. And it was a lovely gesture, but it was so associated with my father's death. It took me like 20 years before I could have a poinsettia in my house. It was just too much.
She always had more gifts than everybody else. She was an educator, and all of her coworkers would give her gifts. And so it was just interesting to see her opening what she had, and so it goes by quicker now.
My mother-in-law is really intent to cook foods that she knew that my mom had cooked for me. So one of the things that happens during the holidays is like, I can smell my mother's cooking.
Through college and after I graduated high school, I always came home for Christmas, and I had my own bedroom, and my mom would always have sheets pulled back, and the room warmed up, tree would be up, and the house would be decorated, and it would just feel like it was Christmas time. But that Christmas, there was no tree. My dad hadn't put up any tree or anything like that. The room was cold.
We would hear chestnuts roasting on an open fire. The first one to grab the other person's nose, because it goes on to say, Jack Frost nipping at your nose. So we'd sneak up behind the other person just as the verse said that and grab their nose, and it would be a lot of fun, have a little tussle with that. And so the first time I heard that song after Jody died, it was so painful because I could practically sense Jody right there coming at me, but he wasn't there. It was so sad.
If you have children, there's a potential for even more sadness during the holidays. For practical information to help your child survive the holiday season, visit griefshare.org/holidays. There, you'll discover articles containing strategies to help your children as they deal with the many changes and challenges during the holidays.
I wish we could tell you that the holidays will be a breeze.
But no matter what you do during this season, reminders of the person you lost will still be unavoidable. Recognizing and accepting that fact will actually help you get through the holidays.
I had to go to a store to get some food. I walked in, and the parking lot was full. It was just, I think it was like 3 days before Christmas, and there were so many people, and I saw all this happiness, all this hubbub, all this noise and music and blinking lights and all these signs, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays and stuff, that it totally overwhelmed me, and I had this feeling of anger. I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs and say, how dare you be happy when my heart is breaking?
We like to use the analogy of this mobile that hangs over a child's bed, a baby's bed. You take one of those pieces off, it all gets out of balance. Well, especially those initial holidays, things out of balance. This isn't the way we usually did things because that person normally did that.
When we accept that that's going to be a part of it, when I accept that that's going to be a part of the territory, then I'm less likely to be shocked, I'm less likely to be blindsided. Now, that doesn't mean being pessimistic and fatalistic. It means just being realistic that there are going to be features and there are going to be moments that are difficult.
Instead of accepting that Christmas will be difficult, some people pretend nothing is wrong, so others will think they're doing well.
But disguising your grief will prevent you from getting the help you need.
I can remember at Thanksgiving being there with my family and wanting to cry and not wanting to mess everything up for everybody else and holding my tears, and somehow I wish that probably I had just cried and let everybody else cry and us get over it and just go on.
What really helps more than anything else is to be very honest. When people ask, how are you doing? Say, I'm struggling. I'm having a difficult time.
While it's important to be honest about how you're feeling, As Dr. Presson explains, it's equally important for you to be selective about who you open up to and when you do it.
I don't think that authenticity necessarily means that we wear our hearts on our sleeves everywhere we go. I think there are times that we need to consider, is this the place, is this the situation that is appropriate for me to, open up or emotionally break down? The workplace, for example, may not be the best place to do that. Also need to consider, can this person, handle what I might share?
In addition to avoiding or ignoring pain, many people try to numb it. But that response is an ineffective way of dealing with the holiday season.
Once you're done with your drug of choice, be it narcotics, alcohol, sex, or even shopping, your pain will still be waiting for you. Only then you'll be dealing with the pain of the holidays and the consequences of numbing your pain.
If your efforts to numb yourself are carried to the extreme, you could end up with a lot of debt, an unwanted pregnancy, or perhaps a physical injury, all topped off with a lot of guilt and shame.
To avoid painful consequences like these, you need to learn healthy ways of dealing with your hurt.
However, some of you may experience such intense pain during the holidays that you think suicide is the only way to escape. If that's how you feel, it's essential that you reach out for help right away.
There's a big difference in being okay with dying, like a lot of people who are grieving feel like I'd just like to die, and having a plan and a real serious intent that I'm going to do something about ending my life. If a person gets to the point where they are feeling suicidal, not just it would be okay for me to die, but I'm really intent on dying. I'm going to have a plan, I'm going to carry that out. That's irrational, that's unhealthy, that's unscriptural, that's not okay. And you need to get help immediately.
I think it's really important to have a plan for the holidays, because if not, I think the routine things that you have to do during that time, the shopping, the cooking, all of those things, they're overwhelming when life is good and pain-free. I mean, we all talk about the stress of the holidays. So if you're dealing with pain and loss and the emotions that are going to come up that you can't even really anticipate, you have to have a plan to get those other things done and to plan in the things that you hope are going to help you have a better holiday than you did the year before.
I'm not suggesting that we eliminate spontaneity. I'm just saying that we make some plans that stay flexible.
We can't emphasize this enough. Creating a holiday plan is one of the smartest steps you can take to survive the holiday season.
Here's advice on how to develop your plan.
What's helpful to a lot of people is to make a list of all the activities and events that are typically part of, for example, Christmas, office parties, Christmas cookies, decorating the outside of the house, decorating the inside of the house, how many people do you buy presents for, all of that stuff. Make a list of every single thing that is associated with Christmas, and then go over each one and say, okay, do I need this for it to feel like Christmas? Or can I just let this one go? Do I really not care about it that much, really, now that my loved one is gone? But if I do feel like this is Christmas, can I do this by myself? Or do I need to ask other people to help me? Or do I need to ask somebody to do it for me? Or do I say, this is not the year to do it, but maybe I'll revisit it in another year. It's too much right now. And you can kind of rank the things that you really want to keep.
Planning helps you know what to expect during the holiday season. And knowing what to expect helps you avoid emotional ambushes.
one thing you ought to do is kind of replay in your own mind, well ahead of time, what that family tradition almost always involved, so that you are expecting these things to happen. So if your aunt always comes with a banana cream pie and she's not the one coming this year because she died, you know, the fact that somebody else may bring a banana cream pie may really sort of trigger some emotion for you.
For some, holiday planning leads to the creation of new traditions.
One of the things that I did that I loved was having parties at my house. I would invite people for Easter and Thanksgiving and Christmas time, and it was very overwhelming the years that I had lost many people. What I decided to do was still have the party, but just change the way that I did it. Instead of me being the one who prepared the whole entire meal, what I did was make it easier on myself and ask my family members to bring things so that it wasn't so overwhelming for me.
Steve and I were a big football fan, so after he passed away, I joined a free fantasy football league online. And so on Thanksgiving Day, I would fix a Thanksgiving meal for myself and watch football. We decided that we would come together and have a celebration in honor of her. And we would all open the gifts that we had purchased for her. And as we opened the gifts, we all tried to do an imitation of her and try to react as she would when she would open the gift. And we had such a great time.
I found that making the holiday visit either just before the holiday or after the holiday made for a much better visit. From a practical standpoint, I didn't have to fight the holiday traffic, and so from the start, I was more relaxed. Once I got there, we didn't have all the circus atmosphere. I was able to actually have a conversation without all the noise in the background, and it worked much better.
I usually light a candle, and we put it in the living room window, and that reminds me that his life is still burning on.
Every year, my husband would give me something special at Christmas, and so when I would wake up Christmas morning, there would be a present in my stocking. And so, right after he died, 6 months after he passed, I decided to make my own a special surprise. So I went to the jeweler that he normally would buy jewelry for me. I had them make a special ring for me that would signify what grief really felt like. And so that Christmas morning, right after he died, I went to my stocking and I told the jeweler not to show me the ring at all. And so I had wrapped it up for myself, and so that Christmas morning I opened it up and found the ring that I had them design for me. It was up and down the roller coaster ride of grief.
One of the new traditions that my sister and my mom developed was, instead of finding a beautiful Christmas tree, which was always a real high priority with my dad, they decided that was too painful. So they went on Christmas Eve day and brought home a Charlie Brown Christmas tree.
Yes.
Like they said, give me the ugliest tree on the lot, and then we would all decorate it, and it would look crazy. And to the point that my sister's girlfriends would come around every year to see how bad the tree was. But if we had just tried to pretend that everything was the same and just keep on doing everything, I think it would have been ashes in our mouth. We just couldn't do it.
Oh, that is...
Charlie Brown.
When you're grieving, it's difficult to establish new traditions and new ways of experiencing the holidays. You don't really want to try something new during that time. In fact, you're going to probably experience a few holidays where you're wanting to do the same thing that you've done because it gives you a sense of, this was the experience that I had when this person was in my life. I feel comfortable with that. And so a lot of times it can create a conflict because, again, the thing that you are accustomed to doing is also the thing that's causing you pain. And to jettison those things too quickly would probably be more painful. And so I think we've got to loosen, little by little, our grip on what used to be.
Some people may feel guilty about creating new traditions.
They might be afraid that new plans and activities suggest that they've forgotten about the person who died, or that they were eager to leave behind their loved one's holiday preferences.
There's a sense in which you don't want to have too much fun. You don't want to enjoy life too much. It's silly, but that's how we think sometimes.
There's a difference between moving on and moving forward, because moving on suggests that you're leaving something behind. Moving forward is that you're taking something with you. I think people get that confused that life goes on. It sounds like a very callous thing, but life does continue, but you can continue with life, but with that love and those times that you had with that person.
Some of you may have tried planning and prioritizing your holiday activities before and found that it didn't help you. You were still miserable.
And that's okay. When it comes to surviving the holidays, you probably won't get it right the first time. Finding what works best for you may require some trial and error.
Even though we talk about making plans and setting some priorities and pacing yourself, is also to make sure you hold them very lightly. You never can anticipate everything that's going to happen, and you really can't always anticipate what your emotional response is going to be, even to that which you have planned.
It's like an experiment. That's the best way I can describe it. Because you may not feel the same way today, you may have a different mood tomorrow. When you're planning it, you may have a very good mood and motivation for planning it, but when the day comes, you may not feel that motivated. But it's a trial and error type of situation. But just give yourself a chance of trying something new, and then you will find out. And traditions are not set in stone. I don't have to do these just for the sake of doing it if I don't enjoy it. That's why traditions change.
And so I think, like anything else during the grieving process, you set your mind on what might happen, you make your plans, but then you always, in your own mind, reserve the right to alter them, to scuttle them, to change them a little bit.
It's the first Christmas after my husband passed. My family does a family reunion, and I was really worried about going to that. I thought people were going to say, how are you doing, or, what's it like, whatever. And there was none of that. There was no mention of my husband's name. I mean, it was like it almost felt like they were avoiding things.
Unfortunately, Sheila isn't alone. Many people are surprised by how unwilling their friends and family are to discuss their deceased loved ones.
But most of the time, your friends and family aren't trying to be rude. They just don't want to upset you.
Sometimes I think the other family members are looking to us, the grieving individual, for guidance. Because they don't know what to do. And so it's so important to let them know, please talk about Uncle Fred. And mention his name when you talk about him. So give them a little bit of guidance.
But you devise a plan, either a verbal plan or even a symbolic plan, to say, I want to recognize the fact that he or she's not here. I brought this candle along. I'd like to be able to light this candle as a family in memory of my deceased husband or wife, and we'll just let that burn for the day while we're here.
During the holidays, some people will invite you to Christmas parties or other holiday events. If you're emotionally fragile, those interactions can be stressful. Here's advice to help you plan responses to those inevitable invitations.
When you get invitations, it's really difficult sometimes to evaluate, do I want to go or not? Maybe I'll just say no. Perhaps there's another option. You might want to think about saying, can you just hold my invitation lightly. I'm planning on coming, but it may change that day, because grieving people change several times during a day often. The day may start out well, and something may happen that just throws you for a loop, and you're having a grief burst, and you're not in the mood to go.
It is okay to say, I'm going to give you a tentative yes. Don't commit to that party just because you want to please someone or just to make them feel better. Just be honest and say, I'm still in the process. Some good days, some not so good, so I'll let you know.
If you venture out to a party or drop by to visit someone during the holidays, give thought to how you'll handle questions about how you're doing. Also, give thought to how you'll respond to prying questions.
You probably want to have a few things sort of scripted beforehand, that you're going to say the same thing to everybody when they ask. Have some sort of sense of how much you want to disclose and how much you don't want to share and disclose. If we don't have that, then we can sort of flounder, and that can make us feel anxious and awkward, and now we're sharing more than what we want to share, and then we feel pressured to answer people's questions.
It's not being impolite to say, hey, I really appreciate your interest and your concern, but I just really rather not talk about it. And then you shift the subject, you change the subject by shifting the focus onto them simply by asking them a question. Hey Sam, isn't your daughter playing soccer for Summit High School? And you shift the focus by changing the topic, but it being something that they would be interested in.
Here's one more piece of advice. It's a good idea to have an exit plan or an approach to temporarily excuse yourself from holiday events and gatherings.
Few rules that I always followed for myself that worked out great is I never took a ride with anybody. I always drove myself so I could leave whenever I wanted to. That gave me a sense of security, like I don't have to stay. If I walk in and it doesn't go well, I can be out the door. And the other thing is not to have very high expectations for myself, to say, okay, I'm going to go with the goal first of just staying a half an hour. And if I make it, I can leave and go, great, you did it.
Things start to get a little bit too tough for you. Really encourage you to say to the rest of your family, excuse me, I'm going to take a little break from this now. It's really pretty difficult for me at this moment in time. Just give me an hour or two. I may come back and become part of it. But I think the whole idea of making sure you leave yourself and out is important.
When we got to the point that one of us was at the point where they're getting ready to break down, or they're not holding together anymore, or the dam that's holding the tears back is getting ready to burst, we would communicate that, and then we would leave.
One of us will look at the other and say, I got to go home. I've got to go now.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'm finished. Let's go.
The first Christmas was a blur. It was probably the most difficult Christmas I can ever remember in my life. It was even more difficult than the first Christmas after my dad. The second Christmas was a little bit easier than the first. Don't know what the third Christmas is going to be like yet.
It really does take time. For me, the first year was almost overwhelming, but I did get through it. The second year was the worst, actually.
The second Christmas, I didn't want to decorate at all because my heart was still hurting. And I wanted her to be there, and I knew that she could never be there again.
And the third year, as it approached, I thought, well, certainly by this time, I should be able to just, it won't be too bad. And then after Thanksgiving, as Christmas getting closer, and I get this horrible feeling of dread, and oh my goodness, I feel like I'm getting sucked under again.
The third Christmas, I just went through. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. I got my grandchildren over to help me decorate the trees. I changed it a little bit because my wife always had to have a real Christmas tree. I didn't like that. I didn't want to do it. I don't like putting the lights on. So I decided, well, I can do a little bit about what I want now. So I bought me an artificial tree. I enjoyed it so much that I didn't want to take it down.
By the 4th year, I was doing a lot better. And I could put some decorations up in the house and enjoy doing that a little bit. I couldn't do that at all before. Other people's grief may be different. Maybe that 2nd year, they're ready to put up the tree, decorate everything the way they used to do, and go caroling. Well, that's fine, but if that's not where you're at, that's perfectly okay.
I've often heard people say, the 2nd year or the 3rd year was harder. I thought the 1st year was going to be the hardest. And I think sometimes as they sort of unpack that, they realize that either because of the timing or the circumstances, there were things that were happening that were keeping them from fully feeling those experiences and those feelings during the 1st year. And then in the 2nd year, sometimes even in the 3rd year, they feel that more fully because maybe the circumstances have changed, not just because they've slowed down and they can feel it, but maybe in the 2nd or 3rd year the financial situation has changed and become more difficult.
First time I still can't believe it. The 2nd time it's the reality. It's there. I am forced to face my situation.
It is normal because grief doesn't have sort of a statute of limitations.
And so it's going to be okay if you don't put up a tree this year. And maybe you wait till next year. Or if you decide you want to do that. But don't overwhelm yourself by things that are simply tradition if you don't feel up to it.
People who are hurting need to find additional ways to shift their focus, to get their minds, to get your mind off of the pain and off of the disappointment. One of the ways you can do that almost immediately is to focus on other people.
The blessing of serving other people at Christmas was a surprise to me because I've had a series of losses. A lot of times loss can make us very self-centered. When we hurt, we think about ourselves.
I make sure I contact other people maybe before the holidays or during the holidays and just try to do what I can, maybe just a phone call.
The times that I felt so low and so lonely and help came at just the right time. And if I can be that same gift to somebody else, what a blessing that is to me.
There's another relationship that's more important than any we've talked about so far in this video. It's your relationship with God. If you already have a relationship with Him, then the holidays are an opportunity to grow closer to or learn more about Him.
One of the best ways to do this is to talk to God about the difficulties you're facing and read the Bible to see what He has to say about your situation.
It's like we have to confront grief face to face and say to it, you are a pain in my life, but I can get through the pain with the Lord's help.
Because I can take refuge in my God.
Just being able to talk to God about what I'm feeling helps me because I can come out and then be ready for the social scene, whatever it is. It carries me, like after the prayer's over, I feel a lighter feeling that I'm being carried emotionally through the situation, whatever it is. I don't have to really be thinking about it anymore because I've let it go in the prayer.
And I am deeply persuaded that you ultimately deal with painful realities only one way. You deal with them vertically. Believing that this pain isn't a sign that He's turned His back on me. This pain is a sign that I still live in a broken world. But God's with me. And all that just says to me that I wasn't hardwired
to live this life by myself. I was created for dependency, primarily dependency upon God.
I can take refuge in Lord. I need peace from you right now because the pain is unbearable. And you will experience God's peace.
There's no doubt the first years, several years, especially during the holidays around Christmas time, God and the strength of the church brought to me was my rock.
Your family will let you down. Your friends and your coworkers will let you down. And even people from your church will let you down. But even the times that you feel most alone, God is there.
Now, don't expect it to be automatic like pushing a button. What is important here is that you pour out your heart to the Lord. And Lord, I'm going to pour out my heart to you. I'm in pain. I'm in suffering. I don't understand why this happened. I cannot give any explanation, but I need you. You are my lifeline.
Josie's 31-year-old son, Brian, died in a car accident a few nights before Thanksgiving. After struggling to make it through that initial holiday season, Josie discovered that she still had reasons to be thankful and celebrate Thanksgiving and Christmas.
That year had been my 60th birthday. So I was so happy and excited and stuff that I started writing, making a list of all the blessings that I had in my life. And so every night before I go to bed, I would fill in that list. And by the time that Brian died, my birthday was November 15th. He died November 21st, 6 days later. But by the time that he died, I had about 70 items on my list. Several months went by, and then one day I opened the drawer and I see that list. And I sat by my bedside and I started reading the list of all the things. And I realized that I had been focusing on the wrong thing. I had been focusing on what I didn't have anymore. But I needed to change and start realizing all the blessings that I had. Every breath we take is a gift from God, okay? We take so much for granted, like our sight, our hearing, the fact that we are able to move and talk, and that we have a clear mind. And obviously grateful for my son, grateful for my husband, grateful for my job. There's so many things that we take so much for granted.
Josie experienced God's comfort as she reminded herself of the blessings she still had, despite her son's tragic death.
Even if you can't think of one earthly possession or relationship to be thankful for, you can always be thankful for what Christmas reminds us of.
When we celebrate Christmas, we are not just celebrating Christ's birth, or his coming into the world, but we're celebrating the reason that he came and the result. If there weren't pain, suffering, sin, destruction, discouragement, and death, there would be no need for Christmas. This holiday is about suffering. This holiday is about pain. Now, what we've done, and it's right to do that, we've made this a holiday of celebration because we celebrate the coming of the Messiah. But in so doing, we forget why he came. He came to end suffering. He came to end death. He came to end sin and brokenness and pain and destruction and discouragement. And so, this is the sufferer's holiday. Rather than the holiday be avoided, I ought to run toward Christmas.
When Jesus came to earth as a little baby, that we celebrated Christmas, really what it was saying
But God says the battle is on. The things that have messed up life for everyone on earth, the sin, the evil, the suffering, the pain, the loss, all those things that have just infested and plagued every person on earth. God was saying, I am here to do something about it.
What Christmas tells me is there's hope for people like me that are going through what I'm going through. Christmas guarantees that God has, will, and will continue to address what I'm going through.
What an encouraging truth. Christmas is the sufferer's holiday. So while you may not want to put up a tree, go shopping, or attend parties, Christmas reminds us that we can rest in God's awareness of our pain and His plan to end all suffering. But there's more to His plan than simply putting an end to grief and sorrow. The Bible tells us that Jesus came to save us from suffering the consequences of our sin, our bad thoughts, disobedience, and even our tendency to love good things too much. In fact, that's why God told Joseph he should name his son Jesus. Now, let's say someone has a Christmas gift for you and leaves it at a mutual friend's house for you to pick up. Even though the gift is yours, you won't have it, won't be able to use it, or benefit from it until you pick it up and claim it as your own. And the same thing is true when it comes to the forgiveness God offers you. It's yours. You simply have to receive it by faith. To receive it by faith means you must believe and completely trust that Jesus lived and then died on the cross to pay the penalty for your sin. It also means that you believe that He rose from the dead and that He has the authority to direct your life. Do you believe those things are true? Then God's gift of forgiveness is yours. Let's take a moment to pray, thanking God for His wonderful gift. Just bow your head and repeat this short prayer silently to yourself. God, thank you for caring about me. And thank you for sending Jesus to die on the cross for my sin. I believe Christ died for me, that He rose from the grave, and that He has the authority to direct my life. Please comfort me as I grieve, and show me how to be more like you. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. To learn more about what it means to receive the gift of forgiveness, talk with your group leader or a pastor of the church hosting this Surviving the Holidays event. They'll be glad to answer any question you have or tell you what to do next if you've just received God's gift of forgiveness for the first time.
Earlier in this program, we explained that others can help you heal from your grief. And hopefully in some small way, you've experienced that through the information presented in this video.
We want to give you the opportunity to experience how helpful it is to interact with others about your loss. In a few minutes, you'll participate in a group discussion about the information you've just seen and how it applies to your life. You'll probably identify with and learn from the other people who are a part of this group.
Please relax. There's no requirement for you to talk if you don't want to. You won't be put on the spot. But hearing how others are dealing with their grief can help you.
And if you are able to share a bit about what you are experiencing, You'll find that others in the group will understand and relate, and that they want to encourage you.
What we've shared today is designed to help you handle the holidays. That everyone knows that grief isn't a seasonal issue. When the holidays end, you'll still be faced with the reality of your loss.
So before we go and you break into groups, we want to tell you about Grief Share.
Grief Share is a support group ministry that helps people heal from the pain of grief. The Grief Share video seminars, workbook exercises, and small group discussions give participants encouragement, useful advice, and hope. Grief Share is the ideal setting for you to find comfort and make sense of your suffering.
Grief Share videos are excellent.
The video strengthened me.